Texas A&M secondary, especially the corners, have to play well for the Aggies to beat Mississippi State on Saturday.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Ladies and gentlemen, on the show today, we're going to talk a little bit about which position groups need to play well, need to win their individual battles for the Aggies to beat Mississippi State in a game that we've discussed. Do I think that Texas A&M should win this football game? Of course I do. I think that Mississippi State is not a great team. I think that they're a little bit better than their record, but I don't think this should be a game the Aggies struggle on the road. We're also going to talk about, I want to give you all one more argument for the whole Reed versus Weigman thing. I've had some people in the comments lately talking about why they're pro Reed, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give my thoughts. And then we're talking about how Coach Elko absolutely knocked the portal out of the ballpark. That's going to be the conversation on today's show. But we're going to get started with the position battles that are the most important in this game. And the first one, to me, without a doubt, in all honesty, is the Texas A&M corners / secondary against the wide receivers of Mississippi State. And you could have honestly said the secondary kind of versus Van Buren, whatever you want to go with there. But the point here to me is Coach Elko talked about it in his press conference the other day. The downfield passing attack of Mississippi State is solid, especially with Van Buren. He really has helped this team. And I know that the game was never crazy close against Georgia. You know, it was a backdoor, make it interesting kind of thing for the Bulldogs in Mississippi State. But, you know, regardless, Van Buren proved he can push the football down the field. And, you know, that is something Coach Elko made very clear is a concern for the Aggies this week. It's something that they're preparing for. It's something that they're thinking about. It's something that they are discussing and getting ready to figure out, hey, how can we best stop this passing attack of Mississippi State? So what that tells me is the secondary, especially the corners, need to play well in this football game. Mississippi State's proven that they can run the football a little bit. They've had some games where they move the ball on the ground. And we just talked about it yesterday. There's some games where they ran it 50 times and threw it 20. There's some games where they threw it 40 and ran it 20. They've had, and sometimes it's game script based. There's been a lot of different ways Mississippi State has tried to win football games. But when you are a road team and you're a top ranked team, a top 15 team, and you're heading on the road and you are trying to not get upset by a football team that you are significantly better than, the downfield passing threat is what scares me the most. I believe enough in Texas A&M's front seven that I'm not saying I'm not concerned about the rushing attack of Mississippi State, but I don't think that that's what's going to beat you is what I'm saying. I think what's going to beat you is if Mississippi State has 5 50-yard pass plays and that turns into 3 touchdowns, that and stuff like that. That is what scares me in this football game is the downfield threat of this team. So what does that mean? That means Mr. Blanket needs to play well. All of the secondary, not just Will Lee, but, you know, the safeties, all the corners, your slot guy. I mean, at the end of the day, that's how you're going to get beat is explosive plays. That's how, you know, not as good teams win football games is they manage to get chunk plays like that. So what that tells me once again is the corners and safeties need to play well in this football game for Texas A&M to get the win. And I think they're very capable of doing just that. But once again, if you do get burned, and I mean, if you really look at it, the safeties, and I mean, the secondary in general really hasn't been burned a ton this year. mean, even in your loss to Notre Dame, it wasn't like there was these crazy large amount of explosive plays in the pass game. It was, I mean, in all honesty, the plays that killed you were chunk plays in the run game. So I don't think that I'm necessarily concerned about the secondary holding up in this game. I'm more saying that's how you're going to lose. That's how you could lose this game if they don't play well. So that is my thought on that position battle there. And the next one I have is the Texas A&M versus the defensive line of Mississippi State. Is this the best defensive line Texas A&M has played? By no means. I mean, it's an okay group, not whatever, not overly terrifying in any way. So your offensive line, I think position group wise, Coach Elko kind of said, "Hey, I think the most improved group on this team has been the receivers." Not disputing that, but what I would push back and say is I just think this offensive line has overachieved. Just a handful of games into the season, this offensive line has absolutely overachieved to a very, very high level. And I've been really top to bottom impressed with how this unit's played. I mean, y'all remember back to two and a half months ago, and we're talking about, man, we feel good about quarterback, we feel good about receiver and running back, we feel good, and we just go, man, if these offensive linemen can be good, this football team can be good. And to this point, the offensive line, I think, has done more than you've asked of it. And you're going to ask the same thing in this game, is give Conner Weigman time in the pocket, something that I believe they're going to do, and create holes in the run game. Something we talk about on a week-to-week basis so far during the season is Coach Colin Klein wants to run the football. He wants to push the football downfield in the run game. And, Le'Veon Moss has given you some seriously explosive plays. The play right out of the half against Missouri is a great example. And this offensive line has created some holes. One of the things that, just truly brings me to tears and brings me an immense amount of joy is watching replays from some of Texas A&M's big runs so far this year and just seeing the holes the offensive line's created. Beautiful offensive line play brings me joy. It's like someone who goes to the opera and tears up a little bit. You know what I mean? That's me for offensive line play. I love good offensive line play. And to this point, you really have received that. And you have to be pleased if you are a Texas A&M fan. And once again, we're talking about in the run game and the pass game here. And I think they've been solid in both. But I have a feeling this is going to be a game where Texas A&M is their identity is to run the football, and that's going to be the case in this game. But I would not be surprised to see them try and push it downfield a little bit more than maybe we've seen. I'm not saying this game is going to be a shootout, but I do think Mississippi State's going to score some points. That's what I'll say. And so you might need to get vertical a little bit in this game. And so I think Conner Weigman, they might let him loose a little bit to where I could see him passing for a significant amount of yards in this game, getting a couple touchdowns on the board against the Bulldogs of Mississippi State. The next thing I have here is the defensive line of Texas A&M against or the front seven, because we're talking about pass rush here, against the offensive line of Mississippi State. This is how you can put yourself in a good spot to win this game, is you get your defensive line to get pressure on Van Buren. They want to push the ball down the field. It's going to take a little bit of time for those routes to develop. That means if Nick Scorton and some of your other pass rushers, whether they're the linebackers, that's a safety coming, whether it's a defensive lineman, an edge rusher, an interior guy, whatever, whoever it is, you want those guys to get pressure in this game, because that's just going to make it really hard on Van Buren. And he's a young quarterback, who is not used to this league yet. He's not quite there yet. Yes, he's had some solid performances when it comes to yards. He's been okay. He's not been great. He's been okay. He's been a guy that I believe, if he plays well, can win you a football game. So this defensive line has got to generate a pass rush in this game. If you are getting them behind the sticks, if you are pushing them back, if you are getting sacks in this football game, I just don't see Mississippi State winning this game. If this is a game where you get, kind of 2 or 3 drive killing sacks against Mississippi State, where, they have 2nd and 7 and you get an 8-yard sack and they're looking at 3rd and long, or you get a couple of 3rd down, 3rd medium, 3rd whatever, and you sack them for a huge loss. That's how you're going to help yourself win this football game. You just got to avoid those massive chunk touchdown passes from Van Buren, because that's what they want to do to win this game, I think. So that is the next position group. I've got 2 more position groups that we need to talk about when it comes to this football game, and we will have those 2 coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Those of you everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know that I absolutely love the Game Time app. I have multiple concerts coming up. Where did I buy my tickets to those concerts? Game Time. The only place anyone should ever buy tickets. I think the app is so easy to use. I love all the prices. I've always been really impressed with prices when it comes to the app. I love how when you are looking for a seat, you can see what the venue looks like. You can say, okay, here's where I'm sitting. There's the stage, there's the field, whatever, and pick what seat you want based on that. That's how I do it, and it makes it really easy to do that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Well, we've talked about, I think Texas A&M is going to want to push the football down the field through the air. Maybe just, and this is just, it's a weird feeling I have. I don't know if it, you know what I mean? Like, there's no real reason I think this is going to be a game. I just think that they want to, I talked about Conner Weigman stacking solid performances in the, you want him to do that. Obviously you had the bye week, but still stacking back-to-back games. And I think that the way that he's going to do that, I think the staff and Colin Klein wants to keep him confident, and maybe giving him a few extra passes will do that. But Texas A&M's running game is still going to be a massive part of this football game. We know that Coach Klein's going to want to push the ball downfield on the ground. Your offensive line has really helped you do that to this point. And your running backs between Moss and Daniels and Smith at times even have been really good this year, especially Le'Veon Moss. I mean, he's been a star. You could really make the argument that he's the best running back in the SEC. So this team's going to utilize him. They're going to utilize him well, and they're going to utilize him often. So I think that if he's able to beat the front 7 of Mississippi State and create, get through some holes and find some open space and average 6-7 yards a carry in this game, Texas A&M's going to win this football game. That's just into the line, into the story. If Le'Veon Moss averages 6+ yards per carry in this game, knowing he's going to get probably near 20, you're going to win this football game. That's just the reality. So Le'Veon Moss needs to hit holes hard, have a good game, and you shouldn't have any trouble winning this game. And then on top of that, I mean, the wide receivers got to play well too. We talk about against Missouri, you had open receivers. Now, you had some balls where Ja'Day Walker goes and wins a 50-50 ball, or Noah Thomas wins a 50-50 ball, or whatever. I mean, there were some 50-50 ball wins for sure, but there were also a lot of open receivers, and that was against a top 10 Missouri team. You need to see those receivers running open all game long again against Mississippi State, because it just makes it easier on Conner Weigman. It's just, at the end of the day, a lot easier to win a battle when you are a quarterback, or it's easier to make these throws when receivers are open. You aren't throwing in as tight of windows. I mean, that's not a rocket science take, ladies and gentlemen. I think we all understand and agree on that. It makes sense that if you got guys running wide open all game long, it makes the life of a quarterback much, much easier. So those are the position battles I'm paying attention to. But once again, I think that the one here that can really lose Texas A&M a game is if the corner is what we started with. If the corners don't play well against the wide receivers of the Mississippi State Bulldogs. If Mississippi State has receivers running open all game long, there's a chance that they can win this football game. I've talked about it, ladies and gentlemen. This game has trap game written all over it. And I mean, when the game you have next week, I think when it comes to your chance of a college football playoff appearance is the most important that you're going to play all year long. You need to find a way to, beat Mississippi State on the road. And I think the Aggies will do it. I've said it. I think this game might be a little bit tighter than people are discussing. I do. I think this game could be a little interesting, but I do think the Aggies win. But if the corners are letting Mississippi State receivers run open all game long and they're hitting some big downfield pass plays, that could be a recipe for disaster for Texas A&M. So the secondary and the corners especially have to play well on Saturday. So those are all of the position battles I wanted to talk about. The next thing I have here to discuss is, and I just wanted to give this 4 or 5 minutes because I've just seen some comments about it, and I want to kind of reiterate my thoughts. I've seen some comments saying it's one good game from, one good game from Rigman. Does that mean that why is he the guy over Reed? And to me, it's very simple. I think that this offense runs better with Conner Weigman because of his accuracy passing the football. The throws he was making on 2 Saturdays ago, he was putting absolutely on the dot, right on the hands, exactly where the ball needed to be. He made some great throws in that game. Marcel Reed was just at times inaccurate. And luckily, he took care of the football during his time as a starter. But, I mean, there were some throws that could have been picked off, and somewhere he maybe got a little bit lucky. So, to me, what I'm kind of getting at here, my takeaway from this, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into it, but is this offense runs better with a quarterback in Rigman who still can run the ball, but is also accurate passing the football. Rigman looked really good with his legs against Missouri. I mean, and he didn't do it a ton, but when he did it, he looked great. I mean, he was throwing spin moves. He was really, really good moving the football with his legs. And, the other part about it was, the other part about it to me is the accuracy. Conner Weigman is just more accurate. Marcel, and that does not mean Marcel. One thing we have to remember too is because you're something now doesn't mean you're going to be something next year. Marcel Reed's a young quarterback. Okay. I believe he's the future of this program. I also believe that if Conner Weigman plays the way he played against Missouri down the stretch of the season and plays good against LSU and against Texas and on the road in some environments like Mississippi State and South Carolina and Auburn, I believe that Conner Weigman can still slip into a solid spot in the draft where he might consider going. So, that is why when I look at this, that's why when I look at the debate between Conner Weigman and Marcel Reed, I simply lean toward the accuracy Conner Weigman brings. Marcel Reed's a great quarterback. He didn't lose. I mean, there's no complaints I have for Marcel Reed other than there were a few inaccurate passes that in a game against a Texas or an LSU could really, really, really cost you. And that's where the issue lies for me with Marcel Reed. And the goal for him, once again, because I believe there's a world where Rigman goes to the NFL after this year, and Marcel Reed's your guy next year. And we would all be incredibly excited if Marcel Reed was your starting quarterback next season because he's really good. And the upside is great. I just think he needs to tighten up the accuracy just a hair. That's my only complaint. And I think this offense right now flows better with Rigman, who still can use his legs and is more accurate. So here's my question. I want y'all to comment this on YouTube, and this can turn into a discussion. If you are why in the world is Conner Weigman back starting? Marcel Reed was so good. Do you really believe when it comes to the accuracy, at passing accuracy, which will likely be the difference in a win and a loss against teams like Texas and LSU, would you rather have Marcel Reed or Conner Weigman out there? And in all honesty, if you say Marcel Reed, I don't think I agree. You're welcome to your opinion. That's part of reality here, but you're welcome to your opinion. I don't agree there. I think Conner Weigman's accuracy is so much significantly better right now than Marcel Reed's that he's the guy you got to go with to win games because eventually, in my opinion, it will for Marcel Reed until he gets it figured out. And I believe we'll get it figured out next year or when he's the guy officially, but he the accuracy issues will lead to turnovers. And we've talked about how Texas A&M's done a great job taking care of the football, a great job in the turnover margin. If you have turnovers against Texas and against LSU, you're going to lose those games. I mean, that's just the reality. You have to take care of the football. And I think Conner Weigman's going to give you a better chance to do that. I'm just telling y'all, and I'd like to see we can get deeper in this conversation after he stacks, assuming he stacks good performances against Mississippi State. But I'm hoping that what happened against Notre Dame was just an awful, awful fluke, because Conner Weigman looked terrible in that game. He made some awful throws. We know the kind of quarterback he is accuracy-wise. And if he is that and he continues to be that for the rest of the season, there's no question he should be the starting quarterback for this team. But Marcel Reed, like I said, I believe is the guy in the future, and I think he's going to be really good down the road for the Aggies when it is officially his time to take over as the future of this program at quarterback. We're going to talk a little bit about how Coach Elko has absolutely killed it in the transfer portal. We'll have that conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. A lot of fun stuff you can bet on. We got Thursday Night Football coming up. You got the NBA playoffs. You got the MLB playoffs going on right now. Of course, you got college football. Pretty much, I'm pretty sure there's like a football game that matters like every single day for the next like 7 months, whatever. There's always something to bet on FanDuel. So go check them out at FanDuel.com. So I want to finish the day off talking a little bit about the way Coach Elko has absolutely killed the transfer portal. And has every player he's brought in been a hit? No. But enough have that I'm sitting back and I'm looking at this going, man, Coach Elko did a really, really, really good job in the transfer portal. I mean, there's the names that immediately stick out. Obviously, Nick Scorton, Will Lee. I've been happy with Cyrus Allen. I've been really happy with Ratcliffe. I think even the linebackers that have been, you've been getting some different snaps from some of those guys have been good. Cassius Howell's done some good things. You've seen some good things from Rodas Johnson. You've seen some good things from Trey Watson. So I didn't necessarily want this to be, specifically break down these players and how they've been in the portal. That's part of it to me. But what's more important than this to me is how good of a job Coach Elko did when it comes to seeing talent in the portal and bringing it in. Because it takes two things to do this successfully. It takes making sure you are getting legitimate talent, not just random, people. You're getting legit talent that can come in and help you at the SEC level, and then recruiting them and getting them to come. Coach Elko did exactly that with all these players. He's able to land some players. And, I mean, there's some guys that maybe haven't had a huge role that are solid football players on this team and really could help you in a pinch if someone gets banged up. I have been really impressed with how Coach Elko has used the portal. And you got to remember, the transfer portal is such an important part of college football. If you aren't successful in the transfer portal, you just aren't going to be a successful program. You have to be able to say, okay, last season our problems were X, Y, and Z. Or maybe it wasn't even a problem. It's okay. We graduated a ton of defensive linemen. We've got some young guys that we think are going to help us out, but we should go grab a couple guys in the portal to come in and really, really help us out in the future. And I think Coach Elko has absolutely knocked that aspect of the transfer portal out of the ballpark. And that, to me, like, this point in the season, I'm not looking at any specific position group and going, you know what? Got to address that. That's the one. You got to fix this right here. If you don't fix this, we're in a really bad spot for next year. I don't think I've looked at any position groups and said that. But you are going to graduate some defensive linemen. You're going to lose some players in your secondary. You're going to lose some linebackers. There's a lot of players that you are going to have to go at, and maybe it's depth. Maybe you've done a good job recruiting and developing that your high school guys are ready to go, and that could be the case too. But at the end of the day, it's going to take – there's going to be some players Coach Elko and company bring in via the portal. And I think that he's proven during a short time so far at Texas A&M that he can, what's the word I'm looking for? So, something talent. Oh, why am I blanking on this word right now? Give me 3 seconds to think about it. Keep wanting to say diagnose. Y'all know the word I'm looking for. Like scout talent. There's a word, whatever. There's a word. I'm brain farting on this word, but that's okay. He proved he was able to find talent and recruit that talent. And if that continues to be a trend, Texas A&M is going to be really, really good in the transfer portal for a really, really long time. And the goal is to not need the portal, but you also don't want to be Clemson. And Clemson's obviously better this year, but you don't want to be the team. The portal is a helpful tool, and it's part of college football. You want to be able to use it. You have to be able to use it, but you don't want to be a team that relies on it. And I think Coach Elko has proven that he's going to succeed at every part of this conversation that we just had. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank y'all so much for being here every single day. I'll be back home tomorrow for the show, back to normal, although I like my hotel vibe here. Hope everyone has a great rest of their day today, and we will see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Aggies.